Hi there. So I'm just promoting uh, everyone to a panelist. And of course, I'm showing the antitrust policy notice. I think we might be a small group today, and this may be a relatively quick call. So let's jump right in. Carlo Piana just joined us. Hey, Carlo.
Hi, Shane. Good afternoon.
So we're in an interesting moment as we look at how the OpenChain project can work on having an improved reference library. And this has been something we've talked about for a while. The question is how to accomplish it in the best way possible. And in our last call, we decided, well, it might be really useful to have a way for everyone to contribute to the reference library using Markdown. And in the last call, we also decided that we should probably have a guide to help people use Markdown. And in the last couple of days and weeks, I have been working on that guide. I'm just trying to pull up the URL to share with you now. Okay, so I'm putting this into the chat where everyone can access it. By the way, everyone can unmute themselves and talk at any time. Basically, this guide suggests using an online service, Word2MD, to convert Word documents into Markdown. It has suggested documents to get started with, and then it suggests that people download PanWriter, a graphical user interface for Markdown editing, and install Pandoc for Markdown editing. What do you think of this approach? Do you think it will work for people? What are we missing?
It looks good for me, at least to start with.
Thank you. You know, one thing I noticed with PanWriter is that PanWriter is a graphic user interface for Markdown, which basically has the source, and then you can open another pane to show what it will look like when it's done. But it's still not like a word processor. So I wonder if people might have some difficulty getting started, and if you have any thoughts about that.
I don't think there's any actual word processor for Markdown, because Markdown is not really a document, format that is compatible with very rich documents. I mean, you can have some effects, but you can't include easily graphics and boxes and tables and things like that. So I'm not sure it would make any sense to actually have a word processor for Markdown. There's probably export in some. I haven't tried LibreOffice to see if it actually can export to Markdown. But everything I found in terms of Markdown editors, and really its editors, is things like PanWriter, which have one source view on one side, one WYSIWYG kind of view on the other side. Some of them allow you to edit on both sides. Others don't. But I think you're not going to get any better anywhere else.
Yeah, and
why not use ODF, by the way? Why use Markdown and not ODF?
Okay, so the idea is that it makes it easier to edit directly on GitHub. So
Understood.
Yeah.
So we're making it easier to edit on GitHub, and we're going to lose a lot of functionality in terms of, visualization and cleanness of documents and things like that. Which, if it's okay, it's okay.
Well, actually, this is partially true. Actually, I have suggested to use Markdown in the first place, exactly for the same reason as Shane has said. So to be able to not to just edit, but to use Git functionalities like easily track who has done which change, and make comparison between version and all the things that Git and GitHub on the top of it can do. There are things that you can do with Markdown, because it is not just limited to pure Markdown, but most of the parser or the converter can read both HTML, and sometimes for complex tables you will want to use HTML, and it can use also LaTeX. So for formulas and things like this, this can be useful. For graphics, it can take in SVG files, very simple ones, or you can just convert them into a picture, and inserting pictures is quite easy. Of course, there is nothing close to the complexity of a Word document or a LibreOffice document, but the most advanced functionalities of those editors are seldom used in documentation. Personally, I'm using Markdown for writing briefs, for writing documentation. We are using it intensely in the Oniro documentation and OpenChain conformance process that we are using. So it's it requires a different mindset, but it's very powerful in that it allows to have very consistent and very tightly rendered documents at the end, because people cannot mess up with it, basically.
And I suppose one concept that's in play here is that the source document will be marked down, but it doesn't preclude having documents in Word format or InDesign. It's just that the source original core document will be marked down for editing, and the rest is prep for publishing.
Yeah, actually, with Pandoc, you can export to pretty much everything, including PDF, via LaTeX, via ODF, via docx. Actually, I'm using intensively OXML filters, because they render quite well, and I have Word doc templates, which can use many styles directly in Markdown. And so for the eye candy part of documentation, this is not really a problem. Actually, you can achieve quite tight consistency, because people just edit the Markdown. You filter it through a template, a Pandoc using template, and boom, you have very nice looking, consistent, impeccable, very fine detail documents in the end. Then you can convert them into PDF, and there's a lot of you can do if you worry about the quality, the graphic quality of the final document.
Now, of course, this doesn't mean that we're always we're definitely right, but this is the rationale we have, and this is where we currently are. And one of the problems or challenges we have is that our reference library has over 1,000 documents in all types of formats at the moment. So it's really scattershot, and it's getting extremely hard to not just navigate, but also to contribute to. So, the origin of this, Balakrishna, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, is trying to find a way to make it easier for people to get engaged, not just to find, but also to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, this became a huge challenge for us when we wanted to identify, a global platform for contribution in any way. For example, for the last 1 year, we have been working intensively on developing OpenChain course for the Linux Foundation. At that time, first course we developed it on Google platform, and then some parts of the world couldn't access it. And then the second course we tried to develop on the Microsoft platform, and people who did not have any license, or they whoever had trial version licenses, they had some issues with making the contribution. So this seemed more viable option for us.
Yeah, to chime in about it, my personal experience with writing documents is that they tend to cope very poorly when it comes to many contributions from different people, either using redline or markup, or using versioning, because it's a mess understanding who, what changes what, and sometimes changes got missed because somebody just uploads a document which comes from a version which is not the current one. It's all sort of mess. Git is designed exactly for that. You can design a very easy workflow, and typically you use branching. You use a temporary branch, use merge request. In merge request, you can well, actually, it's pull request in GitHub. In GitLab, I'm using mainly GitLab, but you can easily make proposal modifications, small modification to the edits without even opening a different branch. You can operate there. You can have a discussion, and when discussion is over, you can merge the comment, and you have track who on what has been done. And in case of conflict, there is a way to track down which the conflict is, and you get a chance to combine if there is no automated decision that can be in place. So it's of course it requires a mindset that is very common in software developers, and it's not that common in other profession like lawyers, as I am, or whichever other profession people are doing. But yeah, it requires a bit of effort initially. There is a learning curve which is not very smooth, but once you get the gist of it, yeah. And by the way, additionally, the tool set that Shane proposes is just one. I personally use a very different setup. I use Atom. I'm using some very clever plugins. One makes very nice looking tables. It has in a preview. I'm even using a modified version of Pandoc, which is useful for other things. But you can use whatever fits your build better. So it's this is the beauty. You're not forced to use one single tool. You can use the best tool for your environment. And Markdown is quite ubiquitously understood prima facie by anybody just looking at it, and is the document is the format for documentation of software makers. So software makers will understand immediately, and yeah, and it's it doesn't require any kind of or very basic learning of the basic the basic syntax, because it's quite intuitive. It's far more intuitive than HTML, by the way.
We also have a comment in the chat from Lafuno. Lafuno, I'm not quite sure what you mean by data sets. Most of our documents are relatively self-contained. For example, we have a self-certification questionnaire, which describes the questions you need to ask yourself to become OpenChain conformant. And this document stands on its own. People can use it without needing to refer to any other documents. We also have, for example, a document to help managers understand OpenChain. And again, that's a very targeted document towards one demographic. And it does share some information with other documents, but it's really about taking the general idea of OpenChain and writing about it in a way that might appeal to managers. So I just wanted to clarify that that's the sort of approach that's being used. So it may not be possible to split things into to make a generalized map.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm suggesting because you said there's over 1,000 documents, which obviously for me, if I were to go to that place, it will be a heartache. So what I'm suggesting is that, like the example you just gave, so it falls under compliance. So it means we have the compliance section where if we are talking about OpenChain compliance, so everybody who wants the resources to use or to contribute more or collaborate, you know where to go, and all the documents are there. So it's not like I have to go through every line to find what I'm looking for. So I'm saying to make it even easier for access. Currently, it's not really easily accessible. So that's why I am suggesting that the documents that are going to be leading us to, for argument's sake, OpenChain compliance should be grouped under one data set, like a better word.
That's
and then
good point about how to get control of the overall library.
yeah, I believe that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course, using a Git-based approach, you get the benefit of having a fully searchable repository of everything. So it's very easy to find the document you're searching for, even if you don't follow a very strict hierarchy of directors or whatever. So that's also a benefit, and you quite easily can make visually compare to version of the same document very, very granularly from one commit to another commit. There's plenty of tools that can do it, including Git diff, which is very powerful.
Steve also made a point in the chat that maybe instead of going straight to a pull request, we might want to assign an issue first. That's a good point. Stephen, what's your own workflow in how you approach these things?
This is me chasing around for the mute button. I don't have a workflow for that. I'm relatively inexperienced about these things in that I have never actually done a fork and pull request and so on a GitHub repo as opposed to local Git repos of my own organization. So I don't know how it's usually done. That's why I'm looking for inputs on this.
I think then we have to ask someone like Carlo, how do you do it?
Well, I can describe what I usually do. I'm not sure it's the correct workflow, but you can have whatever workflow you decided. So the flexibility is almost unlimited. What I do is that if I find something that can be easily fixed, I just go for a pull request. So I set up a branch. I call it something like patch or fix, or which gives the meaning, and I open a pull request. A pull request will have a rationale with a description and can open a list of comments, so for a discussion of whether to accept or not, and then the pull request is accepted. Conversely, if I see a more complex or more far-reaching change that requires prior deliberation before actually doing the changes, you open or simply you see that there is something that is not working and you want somebody to fix it, you open an issue. An issue can be linked to a pull request. Actually, usually the pull request makes a reference to issue and say this fixes issue number 25, and so you have the problem, you have the fix, and when you merge the pull request, the issue is closed, and so you also have a track of the rationale for the change and for the change itself. But they are interchangeable to a large extent. Only if you have a pull request is because you have already the code in there. Whereas with the issue can be even closed without any change, because people say, no, this is not actually a problem. So issue is more a discussion point, and pull request is the discussion of something you have already done. That's it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Good summary too. Thank you.
Welcome.
I guess for many of us, it's new territory and trying to get this approach right. So, Carlo, it's fantastic to have your input here.
I've been there. I'm not a programmer. I am a lawyer. I started learning Git. I was fascinated, and I got very triggered about it. But of course, the first time you make very, very obvious silly things, but you cannot destroy anything. So anything can be undone, and so there is little damage you can do apart wasting your time and probably little time of other people fixing you. But in my experience, there is a lot of goodwill in the people doing this for as a profession, understanding that not all the people are the same level in. Learning by doing is actually the best thing to do. Not reading manual, but try to do the first issue, the first pull request, and learn by your own errors. There's nothing you can do to do much damage, actually. So it's you can be free to experiment limitedly, of course.
I'm sure some of us will work out how to do damage.
Yeah, probably.
Lafuna says that sometimes the audio is dropping out on her. On my side, the audio has been crystal clear, though Balakrishna noticed that he dropped for a minute there. So it might not be working for everyone. If we don't have any other major comments, oh, Steve, over to you. I see.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that currently in your README, you've got an introduction, you've got advice on tools, and in the middle, you've got what looks to me like a suggested set of documents to start with.
Yeah.
That means to me that your README is going to update a lot each time one of those documents gets addressed. might it be better to put that list of documents in a suggested targets file or something like that you can then reference in your README, instead of README doesn't need to change each time a document is addressed?
I think that's a great idea. And, I was making a monolith, which of course would not be the most elegant approach. It sounds like then we might have two things. One would be to split out for the action item to hold the documents to review now, so we don't continually update the README. Another item might be to include the idea of create issues as well as pull requests, and maybe finally to have alternative workflows to PanWriter and Pandoc. Carlos says we should work out how to assign roles and protect the main branch. Yes.
Yeah, because the first thing people do is just make a change, commit the change, push the change to the main branch. This
Right.
can be done for if you're sure, if you're confident. That's not it's the legitimate way to do it, but it's not the wisest, especially if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So it's better to work on branches and merge the changes into the main branch. This is usually enforced by assigning admin roles to a few people. They can accept on a main request or per pull request. Probably having that will preserve the main version, a parallel branch to track all the evolution of the documents for the next version, and everybody just branch out of there instead of branching from my main. This is a common workflow that is followed, and it's quite wise to have. Or just having main and branching out and do small things. That's also legitimate. But every time it's a limited set of people knowledgeable and authoritative enough to accept, to be able to merge into the main branch.
That's a really good point. Do you think we could get started by having one branch which is just a scratch branch, just saying editing, and encourage people to submit to that branch, or should we encourage them to create their own?
I would actually the most common workflow I see in documentation is to have one main branch and people just create branches for small fixes. That's easy enough. If it's not a very complicated thing, that's easy enough. It's manageable and doesn't create a huge barrier to entry for people not knowing what they're doing.
Right.
But as long as you protect the main, people are instructed to create their own branch, to create a merge request and be done. So that's quite easy. Also, another decision you have to make is how to divide repositories, because repositories you can have as many repositories as you want, but if you have documents that cross-reference with each other, it's wise to have them in the same repository. If I were to decide, or if you ask a suggestion, I would. Well, actually, the first thing I will put into Git is the actual OpenChain specs, because that's definitely the document you want to have developed in a Git environment. And that has very, very tight and strict rules. And for documentation, you can have different repositories for, like slide decks, or things like very important documents like tutorials or explanatory documents, which have an official these can be in a separate repository. Then you can have miscellanea, and you have as many repositories you want before. And there you can also store PPTX or other things, but in a much more Helsa popping style.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Lufano had another comment, which was she needs to check if it's possible documents can be created in things like OpenOffice or ODF and be compatible to Word. Yes, ODF is perfectly compatible with Word documents. Actually, Open Document Format and OpenXML are both ISO standards, and they're perfectly interoperable nowadays. However, with Markdown, we're looking at making it super simple. So it's going to be even simpler than Word or Open Document Format. And you can easily import Markdown into Office or, into Microsoft Office or OpenOffice or LibreOffice. Should be no problem.
Actually, what we're doing internally in my firm is we even make it programmatically. I mean, you write the document, you edit the document, and any now and then you just generate a set of different rendered document in Word, PDF, whatever. So that can be done via making a simple make command. You build the stuff, and that's it.
Really good.
The possibilities are endless.
So, I mean, this call contains a lot of information, and Krishna, I think we should probably summarize the information and send it to the lists to help make sure everyone's synchronized. But it sounds like we have a path forward.
Sure, Shane. So sounds good. And there might be some things where we might have to elaborate a little bit on the README. For like the pull request and the way, and if people have to create their own branch, or if we can actually provide a scratch branch, like how you said, where they can push into whichever is comfortable for them. They should be able to adopt either of the two, so we can collate all this information and send them across.
Yep, sounds great. And meanwhile, Steve has added issues to GitHub to show us how to get things done. Balakrishna, shall we wrap it up there? I'll prepare the recording, share with our group, and we work on a summary together.
Yes, Shane, sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you everyone for being part of this. Thank you especially, Carlo, for running us through this, and all the questions and feedback we got from everyone else. Very productive call. Have a beautiful day. Take care.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.